what is the benefit like in your health concerning like the chakras, and like how would you go on the process of like learning about that and learning about healing that way?
Good question. That's my second book. If you were to learn it from me, there's another aspect to this that I think that's really important. And I talk about this in the last chapter of my book. I call it the new human, right? The last chapter of the book. And so the new human for me is like, yes, we can heal ourselves. And again, there's a certain level of mastery and understanding that we need. I will give this caveat. In the book, I talk about going through and struggling with vertigo. Okay. You could say it's a nervous system disorder or disease, but it's based on the vagus nerve. Okay. And so what happens when I used to get it, what would happen is I get this imbalance, and not like subtle. Like I've had it very, very bad. So let me give you an example. I remember when we used to live in this one home, I had to take work off, and I took work off because I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. I was that out of balance. It's like, think of drinking like a case of beer and then walking around. You're like, oh, it's fun for an hour, but imagine days and days, like where you
Yeah.
could always feel like you have this imbalance. So apparently it's in the inner ear, but it's also based on the vagus nerve. So there's different science that talks about this. I tried everything for like 20 years. I tried everything to get rid of this thing. I didn't even know what was triggering it. The one time I got so bad that I was like, okay, I'm fine today. I wake up and I'm like, kind of like stumble down the stairs. I get in the car. I start driving. And as soon as I start turning my head, I started swerving. I'm like, I'm going to crash. So I stopped the car. I carefully drive back. I went back to my house, and then I threw up all over the kitchen because I was so dizzy from just like that one 5 minute drive back and forth. And that one time I actually had stayed home for a month. I couldn't do anything. And all I was doing was meditating because I didn't know what else to do. So meditation alone was not the answer. So the food we eat affects our health. Okay. And so what I used to do, and I found the trigger for this whole thing, and I haven't had it since, is that I eat sometimes around Christmas pastries, and there's a lot of gluten and egg in those pastries. Okay, I love my pastry. So what happened was I started to eat the gluten and egg. It is, again, there's lots of people, tens of thousands of people have gotten results from this. I'm not just saying it, but there's not a lot of science to back this up. In fact, I would even say that science, mainstream science, and doctors will not want this to come out into the mainstream because it
Right.
empowers the human.
Yeah. And it's like, they make money off of these medications in these
Yeah,
ways. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing is my wife says, I want you to take some celery juice. I will make it for you. That will help clear up the viruses that are causing the inflammation of the vagus nerve, which is causing this dizziness,
It's so
vertigo.
awesome.
So what I do is I end up basically, the whole premise of this is that if you can take the celery juice, what it's going to do is it's going to pull out the gluten and the egg from your system, and then you'll pee it out or whatever. You'll go through your system. And if you do that enough, the viruses that eat the gluten and egg in your body will then die off, also
Wow.
go through your urination, and then basically it won't inflame the vagus nerve. And if you think about the rationale of this, the Center of Disease, Control and Disease, or whatever they're called, CDC, Center of Control and Disease, I'm not sure the exact name, they've been using egg to create in petri dishes viruses for like 50 years. It's right on their website. So I was like, oh, egg feed the viruses. So if you
Wow.
eat egg, you're feeding the virus, and then the
Wow.
virus inflames, and then I would get these spells. So what I did is like, I didn't really know this. So I tested a few times. I'm like, I'm going to eat a couple goodies and see, and then I would get it. And so then my wife's like, I want you to take the celery juice. So what I do is I did the celery juice the first morning. I woke up, I had two 24 ounces or whatever it was. And then I went throughout my day, and it was a little bit better, but I wasn't even close to 100%. And so this is where I'm saying the new human comes in. The next day I did my meditation. I had a very clear intention. I'm fully healed. I would imagine myself running because I like to run a lot. Things I can do when I'm fully healed, and I could feel it. And I would even cry and tear up. And I would spend an hour just in this trance, getting into this state. Then I would wake up and I'd have the vertigo, right? Still, because I haven't fully healed yet. But I'd wake up, I'm like all over the place because I was doing a lie down meditation. I barely get up the stairs to the kitchen. And then I'd sit in front of this juice, and I could barely drink it because every time I move my eyes or my head, I would get dizzy. So it took me an hour to drink this 24 ounces. But after an hour later, so 2 hours after I had it, the vertigo dissipated almost to nothing. 2 days later, I went for a run, and I haven't had it since. So
That's
what I
awesome.
realized that we can heal ourselves, but it's not just the meditation, it's the food we also eat to help. And there's a whole education behind that. And that's, to me, the new human. There's people who have multiple sclerosis or MS and all these different diseases. And I'm like, they're all curable at some level with pure intent. You can't do anything with intention. That's why I always talked about in the book is like, I did the celery juice and it didn't do it. But then I put intention behind it. And then all of a sudden, right, there was a change. So it's like with the right food and the right intention, that you can simply heal the body with that.
Yeah, faith without works is dead. What do you think that would be the benefits from people learning about chakras?
Oh, well,
as a whole?
At this stage, I mean, if you're new to intention and manifesting, then I would say, I obviously recommend my book. I would say check it out. And if you don't, you go to my video. Just look up 7-Day Manifestation Experiment. My name's Steve Martile, and then Google it and watch the video for free. And then if you like it, get the book. And that will give you an introduction to it. Because again, the reason it's an experiment is like, I don't know what you believe. Let's try it and see what happens. If something shows up, then you could say, okay, how far down the rabbit hole do I want to go? Chakras is definitely the next level, the balancing. And once you, and I would say, if you wanted to learn more about that at this point, since my book's not out, I would say you could Google Joe Dispenza to learn a little bit more about. And he's got a book, and I can't remember. I think it's called Supernatural.
I didn't know he got into the chakras.
Yeah, Supernatural does. Yeah, and he explains the science behind the biology and how epigenetics and basically how it all works. And it's a bit more sciencey than a lot of people like, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I took a lot of pieces from it. What I can tell you is that it's funny. I've had more and more requests for this, but I'm definitely going to write this book, and I'm definitely going to come out with it next year and probably help people. And it'll be a training manual on how to actually do it for yourself and then do it with other people, like people in your life. If you think about it, it's like, if you can use this type of modality to heal people with the right proper foods, because this is a part of like what the world we're in, you have to eat, right? So it's like, if you can take the combination of those things, then you could have a potential healer in every home, and then be able to like, the only reason we go to a hospital then is something chronic happens, like a broken arm or something like, and then every other thing could be, we all have that power inside of us. I love that. And I love how you do it too, is like Joe Dispenza, and then you do as well. You don't really tie the biblical in with it, but you are actually like bringing up religion in some ways to kind of like provoke a thought in their mind. But Joe Dispenza, he takes the science in with, all these other different ways that are kind of hidden from us, and with the biblical and all that, to like, really show people like, hey, look at this. Like, we're way more powerful than what we actually are. It was interesting because I went to my, because I grew up Catholic, right? I grew up, and then when my parents, when I got into high school, grade 9, my parents said, you don't have to go to church anymore. I was like, oh, fantastic. Because I didn't want to go. Well, I have a niece. She just did her first communion. And so that's a celebratory, it's very common celebration. And so we went. I had been to church in years, but I was listening to the priest, and I'm like, there's some good information there. He is saying, follow your passions, and then we all have a passion. It's funny because he asked everyone in the congregation, he goes, who here has a passion? My wife and I, who here realizes that, what was the word that he said? The passion, but he also said, who here has something valuable to offer? And we both put our hands up. And all the kids put up their hands up. And then it was funny, is like none of the adults did. And he goes, what about the adults? We all have something to offer. And how do I know that? Because you're here. If you weren't here, you wouldn't have something to offer.
Right. A lot of people, I speak about this, especially lately, because I was sitting in church a couple weeks ago, and I was like, a lot of people just show up for a message and they're really not even paying attention to the message wholeheartedly. But what about like showing up for like actually, with the intention of expecting a spiritual experience? And it's the same way with like walking our walk out on the face of the planet. It's like everybody's waiting for these messages to be relayed from the outside, rather than expecting like, this is a spiritual experience.
See, that's what's always been fascinating to me, because it's like, it'll be like, I'm going to do it when. I'm going to start this when. And it's like, like you said, something on the outside is going to happen, and then I'm going to do it. Unfortunately, because your pineal gland is a piezoelectric sensor that is a transmitter, you're only going to get the information of the frequency that you're in. So if you don't change, nothing usually changes.
Right.
Thanks for watching, listening. My name's Steve. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed and you enjoyed this, and share this with someone who may benefit. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you next time.